In the serene corridors of royal life, a storm was brewing behind closed doors. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess once adored by the public, had begun sensing that whispers in the palace carried more weight than she imagined. What started as a casual legal consultation would unravel a secret so explosive it threatened to shatter the monarchy itself. But no one was prepared for how Ferguson would react when the truth came crashing into her world. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Since her divorce, Ferguson's life had become a delicate balancing act between public adoration and private discontent. To the outside world, she remained the philanthropic Duchess, tirelessly championing causes with charm and grace. Charitable galas, hospital visits, and global campaigns painted a picture of a woman still firmly embedded in the royal orbit. Yet beneath the surface, frustration simmered. The constraints of protocol, the ever-watchful eyes of the press, and the subtle, often cruel, palace politics gnawed at her. Each handshake at a public event, each smile captured by the cameras, masked a complex web of longing, loyalty and resentment that few could perceive. Ferguson's heart carried the weight of unfulfilled ambition, yet her dignity and love for her family demanded that she remain poised, always calculating her next move in silence. Tension, once a quiet hum behind palace doors, had begun to crescendo in barely perceptible ways. Courtiers exchanged glances, laced with caution. Whispered comments floated through gilded halls, like hidden currents, carrying warnings only the attentive could decode. Ferguson, ever perceptive, noticed the subtle shifts, the slight stiffening of a shoulder, the fleeting hesitation before answering a question, the almost imperceptible tightening of a smile. Every gesture hinted at an unspoken narrative, one that intertwined with her past in ways both troubling and dangerous. The palace, a world where loyalty and deception danced in equal measure, had begun signaling that the quiet order she had known was fraying at the edges. Amid this shifting landscape, Andrew, Duke of York, emerged as an enigmatic figure shadowed by mystery and unspoken truths. His public persona, a blend of charm, confidence, and duty, belied an undercurrent of secrets capable of destabilizing centuries of royal tradition. Conversations dropped in hushed tones, documents exchanged in silence, and the occasional knowing look hinted at a truth so profound it could fracture alliances and ruin reputations. Ferguson, with her keen awareness of the stakes, sensed the growing danger. The Duke's involvement was not incidental. It was a fulcrum on which the entire balance of royal stability teetered. The inciting incident arrived in the guise of a routine legal consultation, a task seemingly mundane, yet pregnant with implications. As she stepped into the chambers, Ferguson carried herself with the confidence of experience, unaware that every word spoken, every question posed, would peel back the carefully curated veneer of palace life. This consultation, meant to resolve minor legal matters, would instead unlock a cascade of revelations that would challenge loyalties, inflame old rivalries, and expose fractures no one dared acknowledge. Every document on the mahogany desk, every signature, became a ticking clock, counting down to a revelation that could dismantle careers, friendships, and the very image of monarchy itself. Layered with emotion, Ferguson's personal stakes were undeniable. Love, betrayal, loyalty, jealousy, they collided within her psyche like waves against a storm-tossed shore. Her past, marked by triumphs and humiliations, informed her every instinct, driving her to navigate this treacherous path with equal measures of caution and courage. Each revelation threatened not only the stability of the royal family, but the fragile equilibrium of her own life, her friendships, and the reputation she had fought so hard to preserve. The walls of the palace seemed to close in as the legal documents whispered of scandal, hinting at consequences that could ignite public outrage and tear apart the intricate tapestry of tradition and secrecy that bound the monarchy together. As Ferguson steps into the legal chambers, oblivious to the seismic revelation awaiting her, the palace braces for a shock that no one could have anticipated. What began as a standard legal procedure quickly spiraled into a revelation that would leave the royal world in disbelief. Documents shuffled, lawyers whispered, and an air of dread filled the room. When Ferguson glimpsed the results, her carefully maintained composure began to crack. The evidence, silent yet deafening, hinted at Andrew's secret one that could rewrite centuries of royal decorum and shake the monarchy to its core. At first, Ferguson had approached the inquiry with her customary poise, a wry smile masking curiosity more than concern. The appointment, ostensibly a routine check on legal documentation tied to estates and charitable trusts, seemed mundane. She had anticipated the polite nods, the formal exchanges, and perhaps the occasional tedious request for clarification. Yet, from the moment she stepped across the threshold of the sterile chambers, something in the air felt wrong, a subtle tension that refused to be ignored. The lawyers, usually confident and brisk, exchanged hurried glances and quiet murmurs. Aides lingered at the edges of the room, their faces betraying a nervous anticipation that seemed out of place in such controlled surroundings. Ferguson, ever observant, noted these signs with a flicker of unease. As papers were laid out on the table, the atmosphere thickened, almost tangible in its weight. Each sheet seemed innocuous at first, innocent by design, yet there was an unspoken gravity that pressed upon her. Her casual demeanor began to waver when she caught the fleeting, anxious looks passed between the solicitors and the assistants. Hands that usually moved with confidence now trembled slightly. Voices, careful and deliberate, contained a tension that could not be fabricated. Ferguson felt it, the first prickling of instinct telling her that this was no ordinary legal matter. A quiet dread settled over her, threading through the room like a silent storm. The test itself, a forensic inquiry cloaked in secrecy, was designed to be discreet, methodical, yet its results carried consequences that were anything but ordinary. Every procedure, every small verification, added layers of suspense that Ferguson could feel pressing against her awareness. A DNA sequence, an undisclosed verification of lineage, or perhaps an inquiry into financial irregularities, whatever the precise mechanism. It was clear that the information in those documents was explosive. The room seemed to shrink, every shuffle of paper magnified, every whispered aside resonating with potential calamity. Ferguson, who had navigated the treacherous waters of public scrutiny before, now sensed a deeper, more personal betrayal looming. Her pulse quickened as the lawyers approached the moment of disclosure, each step deliberate, each pause loaded with insinuation. The aides shifted uneasily, as if the very walls of the chamber had absorbed the tension and held it tight. Ferguson's mind raced, reconciling her loyalty to Andrew with the creeping suspicion that the truth might render loyalty meaningless. The contrast between her personal devotion and the public image she had fought to preserve became unbearable. The lawyer's careful words, meant to cushion the revelation, only heightened the suspense, hinting at consequences that could ripple far beyond the confines of the room. She felt the first tremors of emotional upheaval, betrayal, shock, disbelief, all colliding within her chest. And yet, the full scope remained tantalizingly just out of reach. The documents themselves seemed to whisper secrets, their contents poised to unravel not just a family, but the very institution built upon centuries of trust and ceremony. Ferguson's composure, a facade that had weathered storms before, began to fray under the pressure of anticipation. The chamber seemed suspended in a breathless limbo, every heart present, caught between the promise of revelation and the fear of its consequences. Duty, affection, and the relentless scrutiny of the public world converged, leaving her teetering on the edge of an emotional precipice. As the test results are revealed, Ferguson's world fractures, forcing her to confront a truth that could ignite a chain reaction of scandal across the monarchy. Ferguson's eyes widened as the reality hit. Andrew's secret was no longer a whisper, but a concrete truth. A sense of betrayal flooded her, mixed with disbelief, anger, and a hint of fear. The corridors of Buckingham Palace seemed to close in as she realized that loyalty and trust had been weaponized against her. Could she remain silent, or would the Duchess unleash the fury that had long simmered within? Shock coursed through her veins first, sharp and disorienting, as if the ground beneath her had dissolved. For decades, she had navigated the unrelenting glare of public scrutiny, endured whispers that could wound more deeply than a dagger, and maintained a composure that few could imagine. Yet this intimate act of deceit cut deeper than any headline or rumor ever could. Denial wrestled with her instincts. Part of her wanted to dismiss the evidence as mistake or exaggeration, but every line of the document, every careful annotation, confirmed the betrayal. The very foundation of her trust had been shaken, leaving her trembling between restraint and the urge to confront the man she once called partner. Anger followed swiftly, a rising tide that seemed to fill the entire chamber. Ferguson's fury was not merely personal. It was magnified by years of sacrifices, of carefully maintained appearances, of public loyalty while dealing with private wounds. Andrew's obliviousness, or worse, his complicity, added a layer of insult to injury. He sat, perhaps unaware, perhaps willfully blind to the upheaval his secret could provoke. The contrast between his calm detachment and the chaos igniting in Ferguson's mind made the palace walls feel oppressive, suffocating in their grandeur. She understood, with a clarity sharpened by betrayal, that power within these walls was both subtle and absolute, and even the slightest misstep could reverberate beyond comprehension. Palace aides lingered in silent observation, their eyes flicking between Ferguson and the documents as if measuring the storm that had begun. Each face hinted at political maneuvering, subtle alliances, and careful strategies designed to contain this revelation. Their presence, quiet yet loaded with meaning, amplified the psychological pressure she felt. Ferguson could sense the delicate balance. One misjudged reaction could trigger consequences that extended far beyond family grievances. The palace was a theatre of secrets, and she had just stepped onto a stage where every movement would be scrutinized and weighed against centuries of protocol. The danger was undeniable. This secret was a powder keg. One leak could spark international outrage, destabilize public perception of the monarchy, and shatter reputations painstakingly built over generations. Ferguson's mind raced with the possibilities: remain silent, confront Andrew privately, or release a controlled storm to the public. Each option carried profound risk and promise. Her loyalty, her survival, and her image were all entwined in this choice. Yet she could feel the simmering resolve within herself, the part that had long refused to be diminished or manipulated. Every heartbeat echoed with the knowledge that her next move would define not only her fate, but the fate of the institution she had once navigated with cautious grace. Suspense coiled tightly around her chest, the enormity of the moment pressing her toward action. Ferguson's decision was no longer just about anger or betrayal. It was about reclaiming agency in a world designed to control and contain her. The choice lay before her: confront Andrew directly, challenge the palace machinery, or unleash the truth to the world and watch as consequences cascaded like dominoes. Each option demanded courage, precision, and an understanding of stakes that could span continents. Ferguson felt the weight of history, legacy, and personal vengeance converge, and with every passing second, the tension mounted. With the secret now undeniable, Ferguson must decide whether to confront Andrew, the palace, or unleash her wrath to the world, a decision that will set the stage for dramatic fallout. Behind closed doors, the Duchess confronted a torrent of emotions she had long suppressed. Fury mingled with fear, and loyalty clashed with instinctive betrayal. The palace, once a symbol of elegance and restraint, became a cage echoing with the screams of secrets that refused to stay hidden. Ferguson's unraveling was not just personal, it was a spectacle waiting to explode onto the world stage. She paced relentlessly, each step a drumbeat of rising tension, her mind replaying moments of past humiliation and overlooked slights. Letters once dismissed as trivial reminders of duty now screamed at her from the desk, each envelope and document imbued with significance she could no longer ignore. Every folded paper, every annotated note seemed to mock her, carrying shadows of deceit that stretched back years, decades even. Tears mingled with clenched fists, cries of disbelief broke the silence of the chamber, and in these private moments, the Duchess allowed herself a rawness the public would never see. Flashbacks surged unbidden. The sneers from society pages, the whispered judgments behind gilded doors, the moments she had been undermined, belittled, or sidelined. Each memory collided violently with the present, layering her fury with the weight of history. The contrast between the polished, smiling figure known to the world and this private maelstrom was stark and almost unbearable. In public, she had been impeccable, gracious, composed, charitable. In private, the walls of the palace echoed with her screams, her anguish, her trembling hands clawing at the air, as if to reclaim control of a narrative stolen from her. Objects around her became symbols, anchors of both anger and reflection. A folder marked with a royal seal triggered memories of moments she had been excluded, letters once treasured for their appearance of intimacy, now read as instruments of deception. Every pen stroke on these documents, every seal, seemed to carry the weight of complicity, evidence that Andrew's duplicity had been calculated, deliberate, and chillingly precise. The Duchess's mind raced, shifting between visions of revenge and restraint, each thought sharpened by the knowledge that one misstep could ignite a scandal with global repercussions. Her internal struggle was brutal. Should she act immediately, confront Andrew with the full force of her fury, or mask her emotions to preserve the fragile facade that still held the palace together? Loyalty to family warred against instinctive betrayal. A sense of duty clashed with a visceral need for justice. Each heartbeat was amplified by the awareness that her decisions could shatter reputations, careers, and centuries of tradition. Ferguson's chest tightened as she imagined the confrontation, ahead words poised like daggers, glances loaded with unspoken accusations, every interaction a potential spark for chaos. Even as rage coursed through her, fear threaded beneath, a subtle but persistent reminder of the stakes. The palace was no longer a sanctuary, but a labyrinth of power and secrecy, and Ferguson, caught between her own impulses and the weight of history, realized she was both prisoner and agent of her own reckoning. The intensity of her emotions mirrored the volatility of the moment, every sigh, every whisper of movement in the room, heightening anticipation. The Duchess's private storm hinted at the public tempest to come, a revelation that could engulf not just her life, but the monarchy itself. As Ferguson grapples with her emotions, the first confrontations loom, each word, glance, and secret poised to ignite a palace-wide crisis. In a rare private audience, Ferguson confronted Andrew, her voice trembling, yet laced with steel. Every word cut deeper than the last as accusations flew, and the air thickened with tension. Andrew, caught between denial and guilt, offered explanations that only fanned the flames. Their confrontation was not just personal, it was a duel of power, pride, and the very fate of royal reputation hanging by a thread. The palace room, bathed in muted light, seemed to shrink around them, each ornate detail amplifying the silent weight of history and expectation. Ferguson's eyes bore into Andrew with the precision of a judge, while his posture shifted from controlled calm to the uneasy shuffle of someone cornered. The dialogue crackled with veiled threats, subtle insinuations, and the raw edge of betrayal. Every word was measured yet loaded, a weapon sharpened over years of protocol and secrecy. Neither could afford a misstep, yet both teetered dangerously on the precipice of unrestrained truth. Andrew's explanations, layered in careful deflection, did little to quell the storm Ferguson had carried in her chest. Each excuse seemed to erode his credibility, feeding her sense of vindication and outrage. The clash of their wills became a battle, not just of accusation and defense, but of control over the narrative itself. Ferguson's fury was deliberate, honed by years of managing perception and surviving scrutiny, yet now unchained. It threatened to expose fissures in the very institution she had once navigated with caution. Amid their verbal duel, the tension of conflicting loyalties pressed down like an invisible hand. Family ties warred against public duty, affection wrestled with anger, and the weight of centuries of monarchy hovered over every word. Ferguson understood that a misstep could ignite scandal far beyond the walls of the room, yet the truth demanded confrontation. She probed, each question sharper than the last, teasing near revelations, testing Andrew's composure. Every hesitation he offered became a chink in his armor, a fleeting window into the secrets he had long tried to contain. The room vibrated with suspense, pauses stretched unbearably, each silence pregnant with potential catastrophe. Ferguson's composure, though strained, radiated authority, a signal that she would not be swayed or silenced. Andrew, meanwhile, struggled to maintain a veneer of dignity, his every gesture betraying the precariousness of his position. The dialogue was a chess match, each carefully chosen phrase a move with stat, cares that could ripple through public perception, royal protocol, and personal legacy alike. Ferguson's gaze never wavered, her determination unshakable, foreshadowing that this confrontation though climactic, was only the first in a series of upheavals yet to come. As revelations and near admissions danced on the edge of disclosure, the duel reached its zenith, tension cracking like thunder. Ferguson, unwilling to concede control, extracted every fragment of truth she could, forcing Andrew to confront not only her fury, but the inevitability of exposure. Their exchange became a study in power, pride, and the fragility of reputation. Every glance, every measured breath, carried with it the weight of consequences, the anticipation of scandal, and the silent roar of history pressing against the walls. As the confrontation ends, Ferguson steps away, her mind racing with possibilities, the palace corridors already whispering of the storm that is about to break. Beyond the personal drama, the palace itself became a battlefield. Allies shifted, secrets were bartered, and whispers filled the gilded halls. Ferguson realized that she was not only facing Andrew, but an intricate web of courtiers, advisors, and family members, each with their own agenda. Trust became currency, deception, a weapon. Every step she took revealed hidden alliances, each more dangerous than the last, as the royal saga teetered on the edge of catastrophe. Shadowy figures moved like phantoms behind the polished veneer of the palace, their presence felt rather than seen. Courtiers exchanged coded glances, letters were passed with subtle gestures, and clandestine meetings took place in the corners of opulent chambers where no one dared intrude. Ferguson quickly understood that these whispers carried power. Information could be weaponized as easily as a decree from the throne. Every conversation, every half-smile, was a test of loyalty, a measure of who would bend and who would betray. The stakes were no longer simply personal, they had become political, a dangerous calculus of influence, legacy, and control. Ferguson navigated this labyrinth of allegiance with calculated caution. She met with allies under the guise of routine courtesy, probing for loyalty and testing reactions, without revealing the full breadth of her knowledge. At every turn, she balanced her own vulnerability against the need to protect her reputation, her family, and her influence within the monarchy. Each whispered warning and half-truth she gathered became ammunition, a way to hold power without exposing herself prematurely. Yet with every step, she sensed the risk of misjudgment, the threat of a single misinterpreted message, igniting a firestorm she could not contain. The power dynamics were merciless. Some sought to control the narrative, steering whispers to their advantage. Others remained hidden, calculating silently until the right moment to strike. Ferguson realized that the palace's gilded corridors masked a network of influence where the line between friend and foe blurred with each encounter. Informants, advisors, and even distant family members played their roles in this intricate dance, their ambitions intersecting with her own, threatening to distort or manipulate the truth. Every secret revealed carried the weight of consequence, every gesture could ignite confrontation, and every alliance was as fragile as it was vital. Tension reached near breaking points in sudden confrontations. Messages misread, arguments over loyalty, and almost exposed secrets created an atmosphere thick with suspense, where every footstep could signal disaster. Ferguson felt the pulse of intrigue in the air, a constant reminder that secrecy was a fragile shield. The sense of inevitability loomed. The palace, its grandeur, had become a tinderbox of rumors and unspoken truths. One slip, one betrayal, and the private storm would erupt into a public scandal capable of toppling reputations and destabilizing centuries of tradition. Amid this web of manipulation, Ferguson remained vigilant, aware that her next move would determine the trajectory of not only her life, but the monarchy itself. Strategy became survival, patience a weapon. Every conversation, every encounter required precision, for miscalculation could be fatal. The palace, a place of ceremony and elegance, had revealed its darker heart, where influence and secrecy dictated the balance of power, and where one decisive move could either protect or destroy everything Ferguson sought to preserve. With palace intrigue mounting, Ferguson realizes that the next move must be strategic, but the consequences of misstep could be fatal for Andrew, for herself, and for the monarchy. Rumors had escaped, headlines teetered on the brink, and social media lurked like a ticking time bomb. Ferguson, once the silent observer, now faced a critical decision: reveal Andrew's secret to the world or contain the devastation within the palace walls. The tension was unbearable, each passing hour amplifying the stakes. Could she maintain control, or would the truth erupt like wildfire, consuming everything in its path? The corridors of Buckingham Palace buzzed with restrained panic. Advisors whispered urgently behind closed doors, while palace aides moved with a nervous precision, carrying messages that hinted at both strategy and betrayal. Every leak, every rumor amplified the pressure, threatening to collapse the careful equilibrium the monarchy had maintained for centuries. Ferguson, acutely aware of the stakes, navigated this storm with meticulous calculation. Each decision, each conversation became a strategic maneuver designed to influence the narrative, to protect herself, and to control the dissemination of explosive truths. Outside the gilded walls, the media erupted. Headlines appeared like sparks against a powder keg. Speculation, innuendo, and half-truths spread with relentless velocity. Paparazzi lurked at every corner, their lenses hungry for glimpses of discord, their social media feeds ready to ignite public outrage. Ferguson understood the stakes. The court of public opinion could be just as unforgiving as any palace tribunal. Every movement, every misstep risked amplifying the scandal, transforming private betrayal into a global spectacle. Within this chaos, her emotional landscape was just as turbulent. Loyalty clashed with vengeance. Her sense of duty battled with the instinct for justice. The tension coiled within her, a relentless pressure that demanded resolution. She weighed the consequences of exposure against the moral imperative to reveal the truth, understanding that her choice would not only define her own legacy, but could dismantle carefully constructed reputations, strain family bonds, and reverberate across the world stage. Each scenario played out in her mind, a web of possibilities where every thread carried both risk and revelation. Suspense mounted with every passing hour. Insiders, once presumed trustworthy, hinted at ulterior motives. Leaks threatened to spill secrets prematurely, while the palace sought to contain the narrative. Ferguson felt the weight of control pressing down on her, knowing that a single miscalculated move could turn whispered suspicion into public condemnation. The dread of potential exposure coexisted with the thrill of possessing the knowledge that could shake the monarchy to its core. Every heartbeat echoed with urgency, every decision tinged with the potential for catastrophe or triumph. As the moment of reckoning approached, Ferguson's misuse sharpened, calculating, anticipating, and preparing for the choice that would define her actions, her family, and the monarchy itself. The tension of secrecy, the pressure of looming media scrutiny, and the emotional maelstrom within her fused into a singular focus. The path forward would irrevocably alter lives, reputations, and history itself. The palace, a symbol of order, teetered on the brink of chaos, waiting for her decisive act. As the world closes in, Ferguson braces for the moment that will define her legacy and irrevocably alter the fate of Andrew and the monarchy itself. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Royal aides scrambled, the public raged, and Ferguson's emotional eruption became the centerpiece of a scandal that would echo for generations. Alliances crumbled, secrets surfaced, and the monarchy faced its most turbulent chapter in decades. News outlets splashed headlines in bold, urgent type. Speculation, outrage, and disbelief collided on every front. Social media exploded with commentary, each post a spark threatening to ignite a full-scale inferno of scrutiny. Ferguson's name dominated the airwaves and feeds alike, her calculated courage now inseparable from the chaos she had unleashed. Within the palace, a storm of internal upheaval raged. Advisors clashed in hushed corridors, power struggles erupted over who would control the narrative, and a handful of resignations punctuated the turmoil. Secret agendas surfaced with merciless speed. Courtiers who once appeared loyal revealed themselves as opportunists, eager to exploit the scandal for influence or leverage. Ferguson watched it all, her mind calculating, analysing, and adapting, realising that the monarchy's carefully maintained image was unravelling under the weight of exposure and truth. Every whispered conversation, every hurriedly arranged meeting, underscored the fragility of an institution built on protocol and pretense. Amid the maelstrom, Ferguson experienced a personal reckoning that was both painful and liberating. The fury she had contained for years, The anger at betrayal, the frustration of public scrutiny, and the suffocating constraints of palace life exploded into clarity. She recognized the power within her own hands, the ability to confront deceit, reclaim agency, and redefine the boundaries of loyalty and justice. The eruption of emotion, though devastating, became a crucible in which her resilience and cunning were tested and strengthened. She understood that this moment would define not only Andrew's legacy but her own, and that her choices would ripple far beyond the palace walls. Andrew's attempts at crisis management floundered against the velocity of exposure. Public statements, carefully worded apologies, and private consultations with advisors only amplified the spectacle, revealing gaps in judgment and a lack of preparedness for the consequences of his actions. The contrast between Ferguson's strategic mastery and his reactive maneuvering became stark, highlighting the imbalance of control and the profound stakes of reputation and accountability. The palace, once a theatre of controlled appearances, had transformed into a stage of unbridled tension, where every action, statement, and gesture carried monumental consequence. Even as the scandal dominated global headlines, lingering questions persisted. What secrets remained buried? Who would recover and who would fall? And how would the monarchy rebuild its image in the aftermath? Ferguson's confrontation with betrayal, her command of the unfolding drama, and the emotional courage she exhibited suggested that the consequences would extend far beyond the immediate crisis. Long-term implications loomed. Protocols would be rewritten, alliances re-evaluated, and the very rules govern royal conduct would be forever altered. Her actions ensured that this was not merely a scandal, but a transformation in the balance of power and the understanding of accountability within the palace. As the dust settles, Ferguson emerges as both victor and witness, her actions leaving a permanent mark on the monarchy, and the world eagerly awaits the next chapter of this royal saga. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.